Your work speaks of a president who committed countless acts of obstruction of justice that, in my opinion, and that of many other prosecutors, had it been anyone else in the country, they would have been indicted.
In my view, if anyone else in America engaged in these actions, they would have been charged with witness tampering.
Anyone else who blatantly interfered with a criminal investigation like yours would be arrested and indicted on charges of obstruction of justice.
It is clear to me, if anyone else had ordered a witness to create a false record and cover up acts that are subject of a law enforcement investigation, that person would be facing criminal charges.
Joining our discussion now is Ron Klain, former chief counsel of the Senate Judiciary Committee and a senior aide to Vice President Joe Biden and President Obama. Also with us, Mika Ouyang, a former staff member of the House Intelligence Committee. Jill Wine-Banks is here. She's a former assistant Watergate special prosecutor and an MSNBC legal analyst. And Ned Price, a former CIA analyst and former senior director and spokesperson for the National Security Council in the Obama administration. He's also an MSNBC national security contributor. And Jill, to the question of what would have happened to anyone else if prosecutors found the pattern of obstruction they found from Donald Trump?
They would be indicted. I'm one of the 1,000 lawyers who signed the letter a long time ago. I said probably 2 years ago that I thought there was in plain sight evidence of obstruction of justice and that the case could be made. Everything that we've read in the Mueller report, everything that we've heard since, confirms that there has been obstruction of justice. Plain and simple. It's really clear. The evidence of all the elements of the crime has been established. And were he not protected by the Office of Legal Counsel, an opinion, by the way, that I think is flawed constitutionally and legally. I think it's incorrect. It's time for someone to challenge it or for someone to change it. It may take a state prosecutor indicting the president to take it to the Supreme Court for a decision on whether you can cover up your own crime and get away with it.
Yeah, a state prosecutor could get around that, ignore that Justice Department rule. Mika, I was watching the Intelligence Committee hearing today, thinking of you because you've been on those chairs in the Intelligence Committee and the staff section, and this is the biggest hearing that's come through your old committee in a very long time.
Yeah, look, it was very clear the members were really well prepared on that. You could tell by the way that they were pulling their questions together.
Could you just stop for a minute? Tell us how unusual that is, because I've never seen discipline in the House, especially like I saw today.
Yeah, usually what you have are the members running around and playing like second graders in soccer, where they're all running to the same ball and they're all asking the same questions. And what you saw today is they were really fanning out and covering the waterfront. And you could tell that they had really worked together to prepare. By the way, the slides came up. They were showing Mueller the quotes. They were staying on message. And they were really focused on a few key things, trying to demonstrate the places where the Mueller report didn't go into. Things like the counterintelligence investigation, some of the financial crimes. And they were showing, look, there's still more work to be done here. And more importantly, we've got an ongoing threat and challenge. They were very good at getting both of those points out.
Ron, what was your reaction when you heard in Mueller's opening statement that he was indeed going to accept the restrictions that Attorney General Barr suggested that he accept for this hearing?
Well, I wasn't surprised because he is a rule follower and a patriot, as Congressman Swalwell said, and he plays by the rules. But it was a clear sign that today's hearing was not the end of what Congress needs to do to look into the events of what happened in 2016 and then afterwards with the Trump campaign and the Trump presidency. It was a clear signal that, look, if you are going to do your jobs, House committees, then after I finish testifying today, you need to fire up the subpoena machine. You need to go to court and enforce those subpoenas and get to the truth. Because Robert Mueller couldn't tell the full truth today, and the truth is important for these committees to find out.
Ned Price, not one Republican was interested in the question of why did the Russians want Donald Trump to be the next president of the United States?
They weren't interested in public.
Yes.
They knew the answer, though, and that's the reason they didn't ask the question. They knew the answer because in January of 2017, the intelligence community came out with a high-confidence assessment that said the Russians were favoring Donald Trump and denigrating Hillary Clinton for a number of reasons, but chiefly because they understood that Trump would do their bidding. Trump was their guy in 2016. Trump remains their guy in 2019, and it was certainly in their interest. But there's another underlying factor here, Lawrence, and that's the fact that not only was Trump against the sanctions that had been enacted, not only was he someone that they probably saw as a patsy on the world stage, but he is someone who has quite literally, and the Russians understood this in 2015 and 2016, who is quite literally capable of tearing our country apart, of pitting Democrats against Republicans, of minority groups against others, and creating this hostility in this country that really neutralizes what we can do on the world stage. So yes, it's about his policies, but it's also about the Russians understanding that Trump really destabilizes us at home, and in turn that destabilizes us and makes us less influential on the world stage.
Jill, how important is the story that wasn't told today, and that is the story of the deliberations? That covers every single discussion that the Mueller team had amongst themselves about everything. It covers every thought that crossed Robert Mueller's mind when he was driving to and from work. What do we lose by not knowing any of that at this stage?
We lose some, but I think we have to focus on all the things that did come out today. It was very important because we clearly established that there was no exoneration, that there was evidence of obstruction, that there was evidence of cooperation with Russia and welcoming the Russian interference, that there was all of these things that are really serious for us to know. The problem is we need to have the Republicans really hear that. And as you just said, the Republicans showed no interest basically in any fact. And they didn't touch any of the facts. They diverted into conspiracy theories and other things, but they weren't interested in what was coming out, which is to rebut how they've played this report. And that's what's important from today.
I want to go to one of the moments of discovery in the hearing where we learned something we did not know, and this came out through Raja Krishnamurthy questioning Robert Mueller. Let's listen to this.
Since it was outside the purview of your investigation, your report did not address how Flynn's false statements could pose a national security risk because the Russians knew the falsity of those statements, right?
I cannot get into that mainly because there are many elements of the FBI that are looking at different aspects of that issue.
Currently.
Did we all kind of echo that currently when we heard?
Yeah, I think it was a real concern. We've all wondered what happened to the counterintelligence investigation that Mueller's investigation grew out of. We didn't see anything about it in the report itself, and we were all wondering. He said he was referring those things back to the FBI, and there was a real fear that they would get buried in this FBI, but he says it is currently under investigation.
Ned, that was a surprise.
Absolutely, it was a surprise. When we heard it, it was startling. Perhaps it shouldn't have been, because those of us who have worked in this realm know that counterintelligence investigations tend to start and tend not to end. And they also tend not to end, even if they do end, in criminal charges. So in many ways, the afternoon session for me was so powerful because it took us away from this dichotomy between legal and illegal, criminal versus exculpatory, and really forced us to focus on right and wrong. And I think Adam Schiff was very good in guiding Mr. Mueller in that direction. And he actually got him to say, and I quote, "We should hold our elected officials to a higher standard than mere evidence of criminality." And Mueller responded, "Certainly." And I think that's a key point.
Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on the button below for more from The Last Word and the rest of MSNBC.